Thanks for joining me for this week's Mindset video. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of reading for fun and how you can incorporate some more of it into your daily routine with your child. Likely you've already carved out some kind of time for regular reading with your child. This is such an important foundational time for your child to learn to love and appreciate reading. They're absorbing all of the vocabulary and all of the sentence structure and language. And they're also just learning to associate it with the pleasurable activity of spending time with you and cuddling with you. Most children's books have great visual imagery, and so they're getting the benefit of that as well. So whether or not you do it at bedtime or at nap time, maybe now that you have taken on this task of teaching your child, you have perhaps carved out an additional time of the day that's specifically for reading to your child. No matter where you place it in the day, it's important that you find that time to make reading a regular occurrence in your child's life. But one of the aspects that's a little less frequently mentioned is the importance of just modeling reading and the pleasure of reading for your child. So this is time that you spend reading your own books outside of reading books specifically to your child, and the benefit that they receive from that when they see you doing that. And they notice that, well, reading isn't just something that mom or dad does when they sit down with me, but they also read for their own selves for whatever reason. So people who are avid readers, this is something that they just do anyway, and it's super easy. Your children will see you sitting there with the tablet or the book and reading on a regular basis. For people who aren't avid readers, and that's completely fine, everybody is different, but it can be more challenging to model this for your child. But there are still ways, even if you don't sit down for an hour every evening with a novel, you still read for various purposes in your life, and there are still ways that you can intentionally exhibit that to your child and let them know that you use reading for different tasks, and that benefit then is still there. Even if they don't see you sit down and read a book from cover to cover, they're still seeing the importance of reading in your life. You might try, even if you have to really, be intentional about this, you could try magazines or even comic books. All of these, there's graphic novels for, adults now. There's so many different varieties of reading material that can illustrate to your child just the concept of reading, and that it can be a leisure activity, a pleasurable activity. It's not just about school time, or also just the usefulness of it. If you read, an instruction manual to figure out how to put together a piece of furniture or how to fix your car, or the recipe books, if you're planning a holiday meal and you're going to sit down and choose some recipes to make. All of these are great things to make sure that you do in front of your child, or that you just, very intentionally let them know that you're reading for this purpose and that it's a great thing in your life. I try to let my children know when I'm reading on my phone. I am a more traditional book person. I want to sit down, I want to read an actual old-fashioned physical book, but there are still times for convenience reasons, I'm reading articles or whatever on my phone. And whether I just sit down next to my child, while I'm doing this, I try to let them know that that's what I'm doing. I don't want them to think that, every time I'm on my phone, I'm just scrolling through social media. I try to show them that we can read in a variety of formats, and that mom does this on a regular basis. Even when I don't have a book in my hand, that I, could be reading an article or the news or something like that, reading about upcoming events in our town, for trying to find something for us to do this weekend, and just sort of showing them with intention, but in a very casual way, all of the different ways that I use reading in my life. So again, you don't have to be a big reader and sit down with a stack of novels to show your children the importance of reading, and lots of different formats for reading, and how you use it, how it's useful to you in your daily life. There's several sort of traditions or ways that you can intentionally incorporate reading as a family, whether it's you just have one child or whether you have a bunch of children, creating reading routines and reading traditions can be such a incredible bonding family time together. Bedtime is probably the best known of these, creating a routine of sitting together and cuddling and reading before bed. You can also create kind of a family book club where maybe you and your children take turns picking a story and reading it. And whether it's, especially with younger kids, whether you're picking, just a story that can be read in just a few minutes and then talking about it. These are great skills to practice. There are a lot of skills that we go over in the curriculum. But then the little ones, if you have older children and the older children are picking, a little bit more advanced books, it's wonderful exposure to the little kids to a wider range of literature and books than they would normally get if it were just them. So reading as a family and having that family time together is a great routine to think about incorporating as well. You could do a spontaneous sort of reading day, whether this is a rainy day where you don't want to go outside, a really cold day in the winter, whether it's a day that for some reason your plans got canceled, or maybe it's a day where somebody's sick and you're not feeling well and you decide to have a spontaneous day of just being cuddling in bed and reading a stack of books together. That sort of spontaneity and just deciding to stay in your pajamas and maybe build a pillow fort and get snacks. And when you throw reading in with that, it's a great way to associate this activity with these other really pleasurable things with your child and to make that strong connection for them in their brains that this is a nice thing to do. Another really fun thing to do is to incorporate reading into your cultural or religious holidays. If you have a holiday or a tradition coming up, right now at the library there are so many books about every sort of religious holiday, cultural tradition. Go and see what you can find about that particular holiday and make it a part of your tradition to sit down and read about it together as a family. Will not only educate your children about those traditions and why you celebrate or observe them, but again, it brings reading into that and makes it a part of your tradition. And hopefully, this memory that your child will look back on and associate then with that holiday. It's a great way to work it in a really fun way. When it comes to reading for fun, don't forget about audiobooks too. That totally counts, especially when they're really, really young, because they're not reading themselves at this age. They're listening to you read. And so audiobooks can be a perfectly great replacement for that as well. Sometimes we just get tired of reading aloud or we can't. A great example of this is when we're driving in the car. We probably shouldn't be reading aloud to our child, but it's a great time to listen to audiobooks. Bedtime is another great time for that, especially if we, need our children to, we want them to put them to bed independently, and we want them to sort of, lay there and fall asleep, maybe without our, being right there beside them. Then an audiobook is a great substitute for you being in the room reading to them. I even use it when I am in the room and able to read to them. Sometimes I just am too tired to read myself and I will turn on an audiobook, or it's great for bedtime too, because then you don't have to have a light on to read. So you can still be there and cuddle with them or be present with them while they're falling asleep, but you can have that audiobook going instead of you needing to have a light on and read to them. So it's a great tool to use at that time as well. Just to have on during the day while they're coloring, while they're playing with Legos or puzzles, while they're helping you clean the house. All of those are fantastic times to turn on audiobooks. And it also gives you an opportunity to, again, expose them to literature that they maybe wouldn't choose to read themselves. So while, you would be picking maybe picture books that take 10 minutes to read, to sit down and read with your child. Maybe for an audiobook, you can choose more of like a chapter book, something a little bit longer that was designed to be read by maybe a third or a fourth grader, but still your preschooler can still listen to and really enjoy the story. And, maybe you listen to it over several sessions. My children love the Magic Treehouse books and those audiobooks before bed. So these are great ways to work in reading, not just surrounding school. You know, it needs to be more than just, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to have school time right now and we're going to read this story, but to make it a part of your family's culture and routine, and really bring it into their lives in a way that's both useful and also pleasurable. And if you can do that, even just incrementally in small little bits, just work on, don't feel like you need to go crazy with this. Just work on bringing it into your child's routine just a little bit more than you currently do. And that will go such a long way to building this foundation of loving to read and to seeing the importance of reading. So I hope you have fun with that this week, and I'll see you back next week.